It's very important to understand what is plagiarism, what is not plagiarism, and what the consequences of plagiarizing at McKendree can be. So this is a little plagiarism or not plagiarism game so that you can see a few different cases and understand plagiarism a little bit better. So in the first case, there's a student who finds a research paper on the internet. She has to purchase it, so she pays using her own credit card. She submits this paper to her professor for a grade. Is student A plagiarizing? I'll give you a second to come up with your answer. Yes, this is probably the most obvious case of plagiarism that there is. It's direct plagiarism. It means you just completely take all or part of something that someone else wrote and you use it as your own. In this case, it doesn't matter that she paid for it, it's still completely plagiarizing. Case 2. Student B writes a lot of great material for its essay, but the last half page was hard to get and he doesn't think it's very good. He has no idea what to add to finish the paper, so he finds a paragraph from a source that he thinks would work in his essay. Student B throws it in the paper with no quotation marks and does not mention the source in the paper or works cited. Is student B plagiarizing? Yes. Now, from what I put at the end of that, you probably guessed that they're plagiarizing because I emphasized that they didn't use quotes or cite the source and works cited. But this is actually a pretty common form of plagiarism that I've seen where just a small portion of a paper is plagiarized. So what it's really important to take from this case is that it does not matter how much of the paper is plagiarized. Any amount that is not cited and that's from another source is still plagiarism. Student C has waited until the last minute to complete her essay. She needs to fulfill one more source requirement, but the only source she can find is one she doesn't know how to cite. So she puts quotes around the cited material, puts government 1999 in parentheses behind the quote, and puts the document title and publication year on her works cited page. Did student C plagiarize? So technically, no. In a case like this, the student has made clear attempts both within the paper and on the citation page to cite this source. It's definitely not the student trying to use this information as her own. She's giving some type of credit. It's just not exactly done in the proper way. Now, in my class, if a student did this and there was a clear attempt, there might just be a couple points taken off, but it wouldn't be plagiarism. I will say, though, that there are people who can make the case, and it is a case that will stand, that if you don't cite your sources correctly, you can still be considered plagiarizing because you're still not giving the attribution the way that it should be given. In my class, again, you don't have to worry. You just have to make some attempt. It needs to be clear in some way that you're saying, Miss G, this little part of the paper is not all from my own head, my own ideas. Student D has incorporated a number of quotes in his essay. All have quotation marks around them, followed by author info and page number. All are on the works cited page. Student D then decides he has no more ideas. He will paraphrase ideas from text he has already quoted and cited, but not include new citations. He will add at least one piece of paraphrased material to each page. Is it plagiarism? The outlook's not so good for this student. If you use a source once, you need one in-text citation and one works cited citation. If you use a source 10 times, then you need 10 in-text citations and one works cited citation. And paraphrased material always needs a citation. So in a case like this is what we call mosaic plagiarism. Mosaic plagiarism means that you have correctly cited a source at points in your paper, but you've also used material from that same source and not correctly cited them or not cited them at all in other parts of your paper. You can't just cite a source once within your paper and think that that covers any usage for it. You always need to draw attention to times that you use a source. Even if you use a source multiple times within the same paragraph, you need to cite that source multiple times within the same paragraph. This is another common form of plagiarism that's found. And also, if this is the first question that kind of stumped you or that you got incorrect, don't feel bad. This is usually the point when I do this in class that I usually have my students raise their hands to tell me if they think something's plagiarism or not. And the first couple questions, students very proudly raise their hands knowing the answer. And it's around here where students start to not be so sure, and I don't see as many hands go up. Student E learns that her next required assignment for class is similar to an assignment she had in another class. She did not use any outside sources, so all ideas and info in the paper are her own. She decides the old paper will fulfill the assignment requirements for her new class, so she submits her old paper. Is she plagiarizing? Yes. So this one often surprises students. A lot of students say no, and then they're really shocked when they find out yes, because if you go back to the case, the student wrote the whole paper on her own the first time. She never used any outside sources. So students say, well, can't she just submit her own writing? It's hers. But this is called duplicate submission, and it's a form of self-plagiarism, because you're not just, when you cite sources, you're not just saying, I use someone else's work. When you turn in an assignment, even if it's your own work, you are saying this is my original work. Once you've written it and submitted it somewhere else, it's no longer original work. It's work that you did before for something else. So you do have to acknowledge. Now, all you have to do is get permission. So if you're at McKendree and you write a paper for this class, and then next semester you feel like a paper you wrote in this class is similar to something you have to write for sociology, what you have to do is you just have to get permission to use that paper. You typically have to get both professors' permission. I will tell you that I'm just going to go ahead and grant you permission from now on. Anything you write for this class, I'm giving you permission to submit again, but you still have to get the other professor's permission. I will also tell you that if you wrote something for a previous class that you think aligns with an assignment in this class, I will give you permission, but you still do need to ask. It's not that hard. You just shoot me an email, ask me, and then you go from there. So please do that. If your work shows up in the system, even if it's something you wrote completely on your own and it shows that you submitted it for another class at McKendree at some point in time, it's duplicate submission. And if you look at McKendree's academic honesty policy in the undergraduate catalog, it does mention this in there. Mandy is researching school attendance policies. Much of the research she finds does not support her argument. The sources she finds are credible, so she includes some data from them in the paper and includes appropriate citations, but she changes the data so that her argument is better supported. Is Mandy plagiarizing? Yes, so what we have here is a case where someone actually cites everything correctly, but the information that they're providing is incorrect. So this is another ethical issue, and it falls under the realm of plagiarism. You cannot change something. If you are citing an article and it says 40% of students do not believe that colleges should have attendance policies, you can't say 42% of students. You can't say 45% of students. You can't say 4% of students. You have to say 40% of students, or you have to find another source. If you are having trouble finding sources that align with your ideas, the best thing to do is to visit our research services librarian. Currently, that's Paul Worrell. Right now, his desk, when you walk in the library, the first floor, you see his desk. It's right to the right and back. And he would be happy to help you find more research that aligns with your thesis and any ideas that you have in your paper. Now, what you can change is things like verb tense. So I give you an example here. The student asked a question. If you were writing a paper and you needed it to be in past tense and asked worked, but the source material said the student asks a question, then what you do is you show that you're changing the tense by putting the changed letters in brackets. So something like that you can change. If you are writing something and they have a typo in their writing, instead of changing the typo to the correct thing, in parentheses behind the typo, you would put SIC. SIC is basically telling your reader that this typo was in the original source. So things like that you can do, but you cannot misrepresent a source. So remember, you need to always cite any idea that is not your own. You always have to cite material even if it's paraphrased. When in doubt, include an in-text citation. No matter how much or little of an essay is plagiarized, you will still face the penalty of a 0. When resubmitting your own work, ask your professors or the committees, panels, etc. permission. Intentional, unintentional, direct, or mosaic, at the end of the day, plagiarism is plagiarism. At McKendree, if you plagiarize, I can give you a 0 for the assignment. You could also fail the course. You will be reported through our early alert system. The first time you're reported, you get a letter. The letter says, hey, you plagiarized, don't do it. It's really, it's not a fun process to go through, but it's nothing that follows you around after you leave McKendree, and it's relatively painless to get that letter. The thing that probably hurts the most is the 0. But you will remain in McKendree's system of people who have plagiarized until you leave McKendree. And so what would happen is, if at any other time, whether it's that same semester, 5 semesters from then, whatever, as long as you're a McKendree student, if you plagiarize again and your professor submits the plagiarism report, that shows that then it's your second time you've plagiarized, and then there are more consequences. You may have to meet in front of the student judicial committee, and you could potentially be suspended. The more you get caught plagiarizing, the more consequences are, until you could even potentially not be able to return. You can't go to classes because you've been in front of the student judicial committee, and they have, found you as someone who needs to maybe take some time away and better learn about plagiarism. So you may have to meet with someone in the writing center that might be part of what the judicial committee finds. So it is a very serious offense. McKendree does take it seriously. And again, you really should never have to feel like you need to plagiarize in my class. I want your original ideas. I want your original voices. And the Writing Center is there to help you with a lot. Paul is there to help you with research and sources, and I'm here to help you. So use your resources, use your time management wisely, and don't plagiarize.